Hey YouTube, this is Diaphone. Today we're going to be doing an advanced offense guide. Some of the most common questions I get in my chat are, hey, how do I safe jump DPs? How do I beat DPs? How do I beat 6P mash or 5P mash or mashing throw? Today we're going to be talking about all of that, and I'm also going to be doing some offensive tips, specifically how to optimize damage and maybe some mix-ups that you haven't seen before too. So with that being said, let's get into it. But first, if you like this content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. It really helps out the channel and, encourages me to make more guides. So let's talk about safe jumps first. I think the number one question I get is, guys, are there any safe jump timings? I keep getting hit by wake up DP, and the short answer is no, there isn't. There's actually one I'll show you guys, but there's some tricks you can do that make beating wake up DP easier. So let's talk about that. Now, of course, there's basic stuff you can do, like throw a note, and then if they wake up into the note, then you get a punish like that. Some DPs you kind of have to be aware of what DPs don't do very well against notes, what do, but generally most people block the note, right? But typically we're talking about knockdowns off of throw, and then you do something like that and you get reversaled. It kind of sucks, right? So what can you do? First of all, in the corner you can actually whiff a 5P and you get an easy, I would say easy safe jump timing. It's not very easy in this game, but you can get a safe jump timing like that, and it's pretty nice. Some of the other things you can do, I find that if you do a double hop, it makes it pretty easy to time. It's not perfect, as you guys can see. I dropped it the first time, but if you do stuff like that, it makes it timing a little bit easier in my opinion. But I don't think that's the best way to beat DPs, because as you can see, it's pretty inconsistent. I think you have a 2 or 3 frame window to beat there. Some of the other things you can do, you can just do a meaty grab, right? And I think the meaty grab's easier to time than the safe jump, and it also beats a number of different options, right? And of course, if you have 50 meter, you can do the grab and PRC it, and it makes it a very strong option. Another thing you can do is you can make Lavania, and even if you mistime it, they take a crap ton of damage, especially in the corner. That's another really good way to beat DP. One of the other things that I think people don't do enough with and it's not going to work on the training dummy, but if you cross them up like that, it actually makes it really hard for them to do TP. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'll try a DP S-hold, just to show you guys how the inputs get crossed up. Do keep in mind that this works against every DP in the game except Leo. Oh, and one other thing is, you want to do Megalovania versus supers. Obviously you can't throw a super, but you can throw a DP, but you can Megalovania supers. So that's kind of how I prioritize it, is that if I'm trying to beat a super, I'll try to Megalovania instead of throw. Alright, so pretty cool setups. I'll just do it after throw. So one of my favorites is you can actually cross up like that. And so what you do is you go over them and then you come back. It's really tricky to block. So I'm going to try to DP it first, and we'll see if it comes out. Oh, it came out there. Maybe it was after a different knockdown. I think it maybe is this knockdown. And so there's probably some kind of crosscut thing you can do here. But yeah, I'm having a really hard time getting the DP out here. Yeah, so I think you guys get the idea. That's one way to do it. Another way that's a lot easier, you just go over them and do empty low. Yeah, so that worked. Another setup you can do is go do and then come back and do the empty low like that. Typically I think it's better if you're in the corner. That way you corner swap and you get to bait the DP out. It's pretty nice. So yeah, those are some ways you can beat DP. And obviously you can hard bait the DP, which is you just do something like this, right?
You screwed up.
And it's really good if they have RC meter, because then they can't RC, and then you just get the punish on that. But another cool thing you can do, and this is something I've been playing around with a lot, is you can use BRC to react to the DP. And I think it's especially good with Eno, because her mix is already good, and then you add BRC on top of it. It makes it even better. Alright, let's do it. So typically I do it after a setup like this. And then you can react to the DP. And then you just get a full punch. And then obviously on, if they backdash, you can catch the backdash. And it makes punishing the DP really easy, right? So it's kind of like, if you don't know, like if you feel really faulty about your timing, I think that's the best way to like spend meter and get a guaranteed punish on the DP, assuming they can't like RC it or something like that. And you can also like, I'm pretty sure backdash works here too. And then you can kind of do some cool things on block with that. And you see it still hits them with a slowdown, so you can do something like a stroke and then get the mix up there. So pretty cool stuff. If you need like an easy way to beat DP, you know, they're going to do it, but you don't feel very confident in your execution. That one works against you too. But let's talk about some other defensive options. I'm gonna put like, I actually have this in ward format, and I'll post this in the YouTube description as well about what to do against each defensive option. And one thing I want you guys to note here, there's multiple different ways to beat each defensive option. Don't always want to choose the same option, because then the opponent will dap and choose something else. But most people will vary between like 2 or 3 defensive options, right? So if they're wake up throwing, this is a really common one too, because if you screw up a setup, like let's go, you go for a safe jump and you screw up the safe jump and then you just get hit by a throw, that's very frustrating, and I know that feeling. So like I've seen a lot of Enos do something like this. Let me actually screw it up. And then they get thrown out, and then, you know, getting thrown on defense is like the worst thing, because you lose like all of your momentum. It's super cursed, right? But Eno has a pretty good ways to do it, right? You can JD, you get a full punch. This is like one of the things I think more Enos need to implement in their game, because meaty or like sort of meaty JD beats a lot of common options, right? The other thing I think is the best option against wake up throw, but of course it can be kind of tricky to time, is you just do a meaty 2L. And you see how I can get grabbed out of it? So if they're spamming grab, it's not the best idea, but if you're on point, you can hit them out. And that's typically what I see Daru go for too. He'll do something like this, he'll walk up in their face, and then they'll do a 2L. If I have an opponent that's very throw happy, I'm not going to try to go for meaty 2L all the time, right? I'm going to try to go for a JD, because that works so easily, or I'm gonna like land, do a backdash 2S, and get a full punch that way, right? So you have to keep in mind like how technical some of these options are. And I think the goal of Eno is like not to be super precise, because that's impossible, but to focus on the options that are more stable, but also beat what the opponent's doing. Because if you predict the wake up throw with a JD or a backdash 2S, you actually get way more reward than the meaty 2L. Backdash 2H is the same speed, so you can use backdash 2H too, but backdash 2S has more range. All right, so another scenario, this happens a lot. All right, so they'll block a jump in, and then you'll go for a follow-up, and you get thrown out of it. That's probably happened to like every Eno player all the time, right? And there's a few ways to do that, right? If you do your JS low enough, you can true block stream, or you can frame trap the throw. You can also go into low, and if this wasn't computer dummy, he would have got hit low, because you have to stand the throw, right? The other way is like after JK, especially after here, if you go into any follow-up, you're gonna get grabbed unless you like try to jump or something. So the way you do that, you just do JKGD, and that works. So you have several different ways to beat throw. Another way that beats throw is you do JD, IAD. And so you have multiple different options to beat throw. Oh, one other thing about mashing throw after jumping, you would think that if I do a JS and then I air dash again, I can beat the throw, but air dash doesn't come off the ground until, I don't know, like frame 6 or 7. And so you can actually get thrown out of the startup. So let's talk about 5P mash. Actually, let's do Soul 5K, because Soul 5K is like one of the best options against Eno, right? So I do something like this, and then I get 5K, which is really cursed, right? You can't redo re-jumps here. So how do you beat 5K? You can always do a low, right? That'll beat like any standing buttons, even, Soul 5K, which is like the best mash button against Eno in the game. If they are waiting for your jumping to mash 5K, if you just do empty jump low, you'll oftentimes catch them as well. Depending on the normal, if you're well spaced, you can do something like a 2H here. And you see like it doesn't work too well from far, but it will beat most jabs actually. Soul's just kind of privileged. The other thing that's really good, and I think this works against 6B, Yeah, is you just, after doing a jump in, you mash 6p and then you get a counter hit. And this is actually pretty good damage. I think probably 2S is more consistent than this, yeah. So that's what, like 5 different ways to beat a 5L. Here's a 6-way. You can just stroke after a jump in. JKJD does work against fast jabs. I mean, slower jabs. So like, let's say you're playing against like an Axel or another Eno, but obviously against Soul it's not gonna work, right? 6p mash is pretty much the same thing, right? I would treat 6p mash very similar to 5p mash, except you don't always want to do 6p because it'll clash, but 2H you get more reward off of. And the other thing is, like, it's a lot easier to do low. Like, even if you're like really up high, you can do a low 2L and it'll still work. So in general, I think 5p mash is probably a bit better than 6p mash. The other thing you need to be really careful of against 6p mash is not doing JKGD, because that will lose all the time. So depending on whether they're 5p mashing or 6p mashing, which most people either choose one or the other, you want to vary your offense, right? So if they're doing more 6p, don't do JKJD, don't do 6p after a block jump in, do more 2H, do more stroke. All right, so what about Backdash? Backdash is pretty good against Eno. In my opinion, this is the one defensive option that people need to do against Eno more, but you still have ways around it. Typically, it's rehopping a lot more. So something like that will catch the Backdash. And if you're good, you can react with dive kick and then get a knockdown too. But you can also do something like a stroke, catch it there. H stroke, oftentimes they'll block in time, but a lot of people don't got reactions like that, and then you're plus after, right? Also, one thing to say is, like, a lot of this also applies to like the post stroke situation. So like if they block an H stroke and they're mashing a 5p, similar options exist, although keep in mind you're only +2 after stroke, so some options aren't as great. I like to do this sometimes. And sometimes, depending on the backdash, you can catch them. And so that can be a pretty good option too, doing land 6HS. Literally the same thing if they're doing on wake up, but I think it's a little easier to catch on wake up, because you can chase it down a little bit more liberally. And even stuff like a random 2k will catch. Just timing your safe jump a little bit late will also catch them. But the nice thing is that JD will also catch them too. And so you get a combo from that. That's really nice as well. Last one I want to talk about is YRC after jumping. You don't have the best options. So this is probably pretty annoying to all Eno players. They'll be doing this shit. So honestly, you kind of just have to bait it. There's a couple ways you can bait it. Typically, I like to guard for a little bit, and then if they don't press anything, I'll go for like a rejump pressure. You can do a delayed super, and it'll hit them, right? If you do immediate super, it still works, but I can't set the dummy to do delayed at YRC, but a lot of people delay their YRC because they don't time it right, so you also have to delay your super a little bit. But you get a cleaner. But it's also really good in the corner, right? Because you get a wall break and they waste 50 meter. It's quite good. Yeah, and you can also OS backdash. That's actually a good point. I'm not a huge fan of, like, especially against like DP characters. I found in the OSs like a little bit tricky. Like you're talking about like you get something like that, which is pretty nice. I gotta actually do a safe jump. Yeah, see like something like that will happen, right? And if I do the JS earlier, yeah, see, even that's blocked. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that OS. Yeah, there we go, I got it. But I think I might have fucked up my safe jump there. Yeah, it's really inconsistent. I'm not that big of a fan. Backdashes are really good, so I feel like calling them out's the best way, but there's probably some option selects you can implement too. So let's talk about how you optimize damage of this character, right? In my opinion, you want to get as much damage as you can out of this character, and you always want to get good OQ. And most of these involve H stroke, right? I notice a lot of people in a situation like this, they'll go for this combo, right? Which is not bad. You have 84 damage, you push them towards the corner. But if you know the character specifics, and we'll go over them, you can turn that into 128 damage and a lot more corner carry and a knockdown, right? And so this is actually pretty inconsistent, and I think that's why some players tend to go away from this. Basically, it works very well against... Here, let me actually pull up the list. I spent a lot of time living this. So you can see it's kind of technical, right? And depending on whether you do raw H-stroke the big tree or you do counter hit, it can change a little bit. What I would do is everyone but Faust, Ramathal, Milia, and Eno, I would go for this combo. If it's not these four, I would not go for it because they're really hard. That's what you need to know from this. Some characters it's easier if you do it insta timing, some if you micro walk. There are some characters you can't actually micro walk. So let's say you are really far, like here, like your 6HS is gonna whiff, right? But if you micro walk, and that only worked because they didn't mash. The point I'm trying to show here is I don't think the micro walk combos are really worth it. There we go. And see, I could have got it standing still. So there's some characters that micro walk makes it a little bit easier, but there's other characters like Mei and Axel. If you try to micro walk, it'll actually drop the combo. But if you do it immediately, it will work. So the TLDR, everyone but Faust, Ramathal, Millie, and Eno, you just always go into that and do it immediately. Yeah, Anji's fucked, but in a different way, unfortunately. It'll work, but like sometimes the H-stroke whiffs afterwards. You have to be a little careful with Anji. So a very common situation is you get a counter hit normal, which you should be landing a lot of counter hit 2Hs, and then you can't. And you see how that whiffs? Technically you can get it if you micro walk, but it's very inconsistent. I'm actually surprised I got on the first try. And see, I dropped it there. You see, you have to be very careful against these characters, and like they can be micro walked on, but if it's like a raw H-stroke the big tree, it's like almost impossible to get a 6HS against them. Against those four characters, you have to be really careful about. But everyone else, go for it. One thing I notice is that if you predict a throw, a lot of people will do something like this, or they'll get like something like that, right? So you want to make sure you're punishing with H-stroke, and then like I said, against those four characters, you go into that combo. Another really cool thing you can do is that if you get this counter hit 6HS, let's say you're doing a jumping pressure and then you go for a counter hit, a lot of people will not, they'll just, if they get this counter hit 6H, they'll just do a combo like this, and then you get 100 damage, right? But if you can confirm first hit of 6HS, which is super doable by the way, so let's put them on a random counter hit. So you get way more damage and you get corner carry. And you see, you could still hit confirm normally too. The point I'm trying to get at is make sure you hit confirm the first hit of 6HS. Oh, so if you get a jump heavy counter hit, go for a rejump here. It's very easily hit confirmable, and you can get like a little bit extra damage. And also like if you're spaced out, like you can't really get this, right? Yeah, so on counter hit you get something like that, and on something like non-counter hit, you can just go into your whatever pressure, right? Or you can go into 2L, 2D. And same thing if they're jumping. Even if you just get something basic like that, it's way better than just getting not the best Oki, right? So if you ever see that counter hit JH, make sure you hit confirm that. If you're really nice, you can actually get an H dive kick afterwards, but they have to be at the right angle, and if you drop it, you're kind of fucked. So make sure you're low consistent with that. A couple other things that I think people need to do more. I see this sequence very frequently, right? If you do a JD on block, if you go for like a throw, this happens, right? And if you go into dive kick, they don't get punished for jabbing. So you might think, I should just always jab after JD. But this is not actually real, because what you can actually do is you can delay cancel your dive kick. And I think you should always delay cancel the dive kick. And you see, they take a crap ton of damage for trying to mash there. And it still combos on hit. See? So pretty much no reason not to delay your dive kick there. Make sure you do it. It's basically free damage a lot of the time and adds another layer of mix to your pressure. Last thing is that if you bait a burst, A lot of people go for something like that and then drop it, or they go for something like this, and against some characters that doesn't work, right? So that can be really inconsistent. It works against Soul, but against like someone like Ram it won't work, I'm pretty sure. And I find this a lot more consistent if you're getting the burst bait. One last thing, H dive kick can be canceled on 3 different hits, right? So you can do first hit H dive kick cancel, second hit that H dive kick cancel, or you can let all 3 of them rock, right? And you see they're all punishable, but if you're playing an actual human opponent, they're not going to be able to react which part of the H dive kick you're actually canceling. So if you know they're going to block it, cancel H dive kick early, because most likely you're not going to get punished. Alright, I think that's it for Advanced Eno Offense Guide. I hope they give you guys a lot more to play around with. Hope this makes sense on like how to beat certain options. Like I said, some of the tips, you can implement them pretty easily. Others, it's going to take a lot of gameplay to get used to. But with that being said, constantly try to implement more options into your offense to beat different situations. Take note of what your opponent likes to do on defense. I didn't cover the opponent blocking, but Eno has so many ways to open you up for just blocking. I don't even think that's worth covering. Like literally you could just mix them 100 different ways. So I mean, the best defense against the Eno is a very active offense, implementing a lot of the tools that we talked about earlier in the guide. So make sure you use those if you're playing against Eno, and if you are an Eno player, make sure you use the counter to those. But yeah, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing, and as always, have a great day.